Hey, what's up, everybody? As you can tell, I'm currently not in my normal setup. I'm currently changing it up a little bit, and I still have one thing that has not yet arrived. And so because of that, I'll be in this simplified setup with just a normal wall behind me. But I want to get into this new information that's come out regarding the Jayden Reed situation. Matt LaFleur spoke about it on Chris Sims' podcast in the past few days. Adam Schefter also addressed it on a YouTube video on the show Jayden, Gabe, and Chewy in the past week as well. So there's a lot of different things that I want to give my thoughts on. But if you guys did not hear the initial story, I'm just going to reshare the initial tweet from Adam Schefter that started all of this. So here's what he shared on May 12th on X. He says, Packers GM Brian Gutekunst met last week with Jayden Reed's agent Drew Rosenhaus to clarify the wide receiver status in Green Bay after the team drafted Matthew Golden and Savion Williams. The team said it will not affect Reed's status as its top receiver per source. The most surprising thing about that report, or there were a couple surprising things, but the first thing is the fact that from this report that the Packers would actually name someone as a top receiver, because as all of us Packers fans know, that is something the Packers have not come forward and ever said publicly. There's never been any other report from any reporter that shared that the Packers thought that, even behind closed doors. And so that's the first shocking thing, which made me really wonder. I just had a hard time imagining that Gutekunst would sit with Jayden Reed's agent, who is a new agent apparently. I heard that information from Aaron Nagler. He said that recently he changed agents, seemingly in the past few weeks to month. And it just didn't make any sense for a long time. You know, no one really sees anyone as a top guy. Sure, people have their opinions, but it's not a situation where you have someone like a Devontae Adams, where no one is questioning who the number one receiver is, who the number one guy is. That's how it is on a lot of teams. CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, guys like that. The Packers have not had that guy. They've had a lot of talent, but there hasn't been one guy that's clearly shown to a majority of people that they are the guy or the number one wide receiver. So it just shocked me to think that Gutekunst would say that, which is why I shared my opinion that it felt to me like maybe the agent could have come in and said, is Jayden Reed going to have the same role as he had last year when it comes, just because they had just drafted two receivers, so he wants to clarify. And then my guess is Gutekunst said yes, and then the agent says, okay, awesome. That means he's still the top receiver, because technically the past 2 years, he's led the receivers in receiving stats. But it just would shock me that Gutekunst would actually say that. And so now to what Matt LaFleur said, then I'll respond to or give my opinion on what Adam Schefter said, because I think it gives us some clarity, at least I believe some clarity, on this whole situation. So first off, here's from Matt LaFleur on Chris Sims' podcast. He says, the first time I saw that, it was a surprise to me because he never once said a word to me. So that's all I can really speak on. But certainly, you have communication with all our guys, and I tell them all the time, it's about the collection of that whole room and what you're going to bring to the table. And he's a guy he's had 2 years of a lot of production for us. So just my encouragement to him is continue to lead that room, because he's done a great job of that, and he's one of the guys out there. He's out there the other day at practice or a win. We're doing some drills, and he's coaching up Matthew Golden. So he's a guy I don't worry about. He's going to go out there. He's going to compete. He's going to compete at a high level, and he's going to bring up everybody around him as well. So this isn't something that Matt LaFleur had heard before the report came out. He says it was a surprise to him because Jayden Reed had never said a word to him. And so this is where I do wonder, because Drew Rosenhaus is a new agent, is he the one who set this all up? If he is suddenly becoming, Jayden Reed's agent, Adam Schefter shared this as well, that he needed to sort of clarify and sort of see where things were. Because you could imagine if he had another agent, that agent maybe was in communication with the Packers, I assume. And then if you have a new agent, you'd assume they have to sort of brush up on what's happened in the past, things like that. Maybe that's what was taking place here. And I don't know if Jayden Reed wanted this to happen. I don't know if Drew Rosenhaus wanted it to happen and asked Jayden Reed if it was okay, and he said yes. We just don't know most of the situation. We just know that Gutekunst and Drew Rosenhaus spoke to each other, and the result was a tweet from Adam Schefter that says it's not going to affect Reed's status as its top receiver. Now, here's where it gets sort of interesting. So Adam Schefter was on Jen, Gabe, and Chewy the other day, and I'll leave the entire interview down below. I think you should go watch that, listen to what Schefter says, and come away with your opinion. But I'll tell you mine after sharing some of the quotes here. So he's asked on the show, do you know who initiated that meeting? Was it Reed's side or the Packers? Schefter responds, here's the thing. He changed agents, and I think that was lost on people. So I think it's one of these things where a new agent comes in, and he's just trying to get a feel for his new client, and they're coming off a draft in which they drafted a couple. He sort of stops talking and says, and so the new agent just checks in, and he's told it's not really, and go ... He sort of stopped mid-word, so I'm not sure what he was going to say there, but he said, it's not really a big deal. So Schefter claiming this report he shared, it's not a big deal, but considering the Packers have never once said publicly that Jayden Reed or anyone is a top receiver, for them suddenly to say it, that is somewhat of a big deal in my opinion if that's really what they said. Then he says, I was surprised it got as much attention as it did. I just think it's, I don't think it's a headline that somebody changes agents, and I try not to make that a headline. They then bring up on the show the idea that from the tweet that Schefter shared, which I read initially to start this video, that Reed has a status as a top receiver. And Schefter responds, I think that's semantics in words. Okay, I don't think they said you're our top receiver. He stopped saying receiver halfway through just to be clear there. You're our top. I don't think they said you're our top receiver. So basically saying you're not our top receiver. Like I think that they had the conversation. And then he says Chewy's agent, giving an example. He then says Chewy's agent, who's Chewy's on the show. Chewy's agent just called. We love Chewy. He's our guy at the station. Oh, okay, now Chewy's the top guy. And that's what he says. So he says here, quote, okay, I don't think they said you're our top receiver, clearly saying receiver. He doesn't think they said that. So if he doesn't think the Packers said that Jayden Reed's a top receiver, I'm slightly confused as to why the tweet says the team said it will not affect Reed's status as its top receiver. So that's where I'm wondering if my initial thought when it comes to maybe the agent asking a question, maybe the Packers saying it's not going to change his role, and then the agent saying, okay, that means he's a top receiver. Maybe the agents, even though the Packers maybe didn't say that, the agents maybe coming away with that takeaway himself. So clearly, things aren't quite adding up in this situation after watching this video, which I'll leave linked down below. So watch it yourself. Let me know if you have the same takeaway. Maybe you'll have a different takeaway. It's not shocking that right when he gets a new agent, it seems as if, which we don't know for a fact, it seems that the agent's trying to just sort of help bolster Jayden Reed's stock publicly. And now, did Jayden Reed have anything to do with it? Did he have a question for the agent to say, hey, could you go talk to the Packers, clarify this? Did Drew Rosenhaus say, hey, I should go talk to the team? Maybe Jayden Reed didn't know what he was going to say. That's where we just sort of have to speculate, and we have no idea why, who, all those kinds of things. I mean, we know who, but the rest, it's sort of just speculation. So those are my thoughts on the situation. And basically, my end result here is it doesn't feel to me like the Packers are thinking that Jayden Reed's the top receiver. And when I say when it comes down to top receiver, I mean the perception that he's clearly the top guy. Not talking receiving stats, because the past 2 years, Jayden Reed, technically, based off stats, he led the receivers in stats. So he was the top receiver in receiving yards. That's a fact. But just that when someone says top receiver, that's sort of the idea here that they're the number one guy. No one's questioning it. We're not looking clearly at stats. I mean, the number one guy should be sort of head and shoulders above the rest. So that's pretty much my thought there, which I think makes more sense because it just sounds shocking for Gutekunst suddenly out of nowhere to say, we've been out here publicly for a long time talking about the competition, drafting a receiver in the first round, receiver third round, and then all of a sudden Gutekunst says, behind closed doors, Jayden Reed is the top guy. I just have a hard time thinking that he actually said that. I guess it's possible still, but as Schefter said, he doesn't think they said you're our top receive, and then stop saying that receiver. So those are my thoughts on the situation. I think that's clearly a big year for all these receivers, especially Jayden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson when he comes back from injury. Then you have these rookies. There's a ton of competition in the room, and how these guys play this year is going to affect the contract they get in the future. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.